Welcome back to Prophecy's Hammer. Today we're going to look at the image, the beast, and Satan's seat. More specifically, we're going to be looking at the hierarchy of Satan's empire, quite simply. And it'll be a bit of an interlude between deciphering chapter 12 and our deciphering of chapter 13. So today we're going to start in the beginning over in England. So here we have in this article, referring to the tribute agreement of the King of England to the Pope from the year 1213, this census was still being paid as late as 1534. The papacy itself has never formally resigned its claim to tribute, census, or overlordship. Okay, so here we have the King of England subject to the Pope, very clearly. Right, so from 1213 to 1534, we have that, right? The King of England or the monarchy, whoever it is, male or female, they're paying and subject to the Pope. And then in this article, about 250 years later, the article we see here, we have this. This is why the peace treaty between the American colonies and the British Crown in 1783 states, Prince George III, Arch-Treasurer and Prince-Elector of the Holy Roman Empire, etc., and of the United States of America. So Prince George is the Arch-Treasurer of the United States of America for the Roman Empire. Okay, that's very clear here. And then the article goes on to say this. How ironic that the Roman Catholic is barred from being the British monarch, while all along the monarch and the kingdom have been owned by the Roman Catholic Church. And of course, we saw in our video, the abomination that maketh desolate in the end of days, how Satan's empire has done this all over the earth. So if you think this one's not good, you go to this one. You think this one's not good, you go to the next one. You think that one's not good, but they're all his. If we're not obeying God, we're obeying him. It's quite simple on this earth. So this treaty literally states that the monarchy of England is subject to the Pope, who in turn rules for Satan, right? But he governs Washington, D.C., or the USA for the Pope. Basically, the monarchy of England is a intervention between the Pope and the world, really, which is also why we'll see American officials go over to England getting knighthood for a job well done, because they can't be going to Rome. That would be way too obvious, right? So now let's go back and look at those who said, let us make an image to the beast, as we've already seen already, right? Remember this, right? They should make an image of the beast. And I just picked this article. There's several historical documents on this, but this quote's hits the money, right? Hits it right on the money. The founders wanted the representative democracy of the Roman Republic. Here we have the founders wanted what? What's the democracy of the Roman Republic? If Rome is the empire of Satan, then democracy is what? Satan's doctrine, right? This is why it's changing, forever changing, and is controlled. They tell you your vote counts, but there's no way that happens. As we've seen quite blatantly. But they also thought that our capital city should what? Look like Rome, right? So let's get back to looking at some symbols here. Let's look at the image and the beast. So here's the beast, right? You remember this? We have the dome, the obelisk, the pentagon, or pentagon with pentagram around it, and the Tiber River and the Capitoline Hill. And of course, we have the image in Washington, right? We've seen this. Here's the dome, Tiber Creek, the obelisk, Pentagon, and it sits on Capitoline Hill. And we also saw these proofs, almost 24 of them. But today we want to focus on one, right? The one we just mentioned, Capitoline Hill. So let's focus on this one. We see the horse sits right next to Capitoline Hill, and the seat of Washington's power sits on Capitol Hill, and in ancient Rome they had the Capitolium. Coincidence? Well, here's the question. What is the Capitolium? Right? These are all the same. Well, what is this? Let's see. Archaeoroma, which is archaeology of Rome, right? Origin of the name. The name of the hill derives precisely from Temple of Jupiter. Capitoline, Capitolium. Jupiter, Satan, right? We've covered this. Or the Temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, or Optimum Maximus, excuse me. His long name, whose altar was dedicated to the Capitoline triad of gods, or devils, because anyone that proposes to be God must be a devil, because there's only one God. It's quite simple, right? Keep things simple. That's all the Holy Spirit does for us. All right, so we have Jupiter, Juno, right, on the calendar, and Minerva. And in the Oxford Dictionary, we have an extract here, also on the Capitolium. It's the smallest of the 7 hills of Rome. Legend associated the hill with Saturn, of course, Satan, right? It is best known as the site of the great temple begun by the Tarquins and dedicated to Jupiter, Satan again, right? So what happened? They replaced the storefront. Saturn, they left behind, and they picked up Jupiter, the new storefront of Satan, right? And Juno Minerva we just saw. So given its role as Catadel and its religious importance, the hill was seen as a symbol of Roman power. So because of its worship of Satan, Capitol Hill is a symbol of Roman power. Excuse me. Right? That's what this is saying. Is there any other symbols of Roman power that we might need to recognize? Well, we have this one that some may be familiar with, the fasciae. It's a bound bundle of wooden rods, sometimes including an axe with its blade emerging. The fasciae is an Italian symbol that had its origin in the Etruscan civilization and was passed on to ancient Rome. All right, so Rome has the symbol where it symbolized magisterial and priestly power and jurisdiction. So here's a couple of them right here. All right, he's got his hand over it, holding the power and jurisdiction. All right, here's another one with the wreath, right? The laurels. This one's got the laurels here. Here's a third, and this one's got a Saturnalia holiday wreath right there, right? So let's move back to one of the founders and see something that he said. Here's a quote from December 2nd, 1784, when George Washington wrote to the officials and citizens of New York. All right, so the quote we're about to see is from George Washington, who said, like, let's make an image, right? And that your state, New York, at present the seat of the empire, may set such examples of wisdom and liberality. So he's all for liberality, and I'm pretty sure New York far exceeded his expectations of his day. But regardless of that, why is he saying seat of the empire if the United States has just been created? And more importantly, why is he saying seat of the empire when he's 5 years from even being president of the United States? He's not president for 5 more years after he writes this letter. So what empire is he talking about? Well, it's clear. Here he is, under his coat, with his hand resting upon it, the symbol of power and jurisdiction. Right? And this is no coincidence that this statue is made this way, because here's another one. Where? Right on Wall Street. Federal Hall on Wall Street. So who's running the power centers and the money, right? His hand's over it, just like on the last picture. His hand's on top of it, his coat's over it. He's keeping it close to his breast, so to speak. So these guys who also worship Satan, right? Here's the symbol. made a Roman memorial because of his work for the empire. Right? There's no doubt this is Roman. So where else would the empire put its symbols? Well, of course, on the money, right? Here we have it. With the laurels again. E pluribus unum, right? Out of many, out of plural. Unum, one. Out of many, one. Or as the Masons would say it in reverse. Order out of chaos. Same thing. And in God we trust, right? Which God? This is not the living God. Why is this guy on here? Well, they're telling you it's their God. Quite simple. What about the other symbol of power? Right? What about Capitol Hill? Right? Here they are, ruling from Capitol Hill. And what else do we see here? Can't miss it. The only thing on the walls. A symbol of power and jurisdiction of Satan's empire. That's what these are, right? This is all Satan's empire. The fourth beast of Daniel, or the foot of the statue of chapter 2 of Daniel, is still ruling. The rock hasn't hit the foot of the statue yet. It's about to happen. So it's clearly still here. Where else looks like Roman? Well, what about this place? What's this? The Supreme Court. That's what this is. Does that look Roman? Of course it does. Let's look a little bit closer. What do we see here? A little bit closer. What's this? A Roman soldier holding the symbol of power and jurisdiction of Rome, Satan's empire, sitting next to the king. Sitting next to he who rules, telling you what the power and jurisdiction of this place is. So these are not coincidences. All right, and these are just... there's much more of this, obviously. Just as we saw the symbol. As an example, what do we have here? Does this look Roman to you? Certainly does. Can't get any more Roman looking to me. But let's look a little closer at this guy. I mean, this is a pretty good-sized building. Right? What do we see first off? Well, of course, the symbol of power and jurisdiction. He's sitting in the seat of power and jurisdiction. This guy? Does that make any sense when you think about it? That they would make a statue after these guys murdered him? They murdered him, and then they made this huge statue of him. Look at the size of this thing. Look at it. It's huge. Why would they make a statue of this? Look again at from far. Look at the grandeur of this building. Look at this. Why would they do that for someone they murdered? They didn't. They tell you what this is. This is a symbol, a throne of jurisdiction of power. Of who? Well, it says in this temple. It's a temple. So what do you do in a temple? You worship, right? So if Saturn and Jupiter and Zeus and all these other names are Satan, who do you think this symbolizes in this huge temple? You got it. This is a throne of Satan. Look at this. We have him sitting here in his temple, looking where? Where is he looking? You guessed it. Overlooking his empire and those who worship him. This is Capitolium. It's the temple of Satan, right? From ancient Rome. So that's what he's doing here. And not far off, he keeps his closely appointed prince in the other building, right? You can even see the obelisk right here in the background, but where does he sit? This guy in the White House. He sits in the Oval Office. Doesn't he? He sits in the Oval Office, in the Oval. In the Oval. So what are we looking at here? What is this? It's Revelation 13:4. See it? And they worship Satan, who gave power to the empire. So why wouldn't they make a temple to him, to honor him? Right? It says, and they worship the dragon. Well, we know that's Satan, who gave power to the beast, which we know that's an empire, right? This is the empire. Here it is, right in front of us. Now let's look a little closer at this one, this area here. What's going on there? So here we have him sitting here, and if you look close at the statue, he's not actually looking directly across, it doesn't seem. It looks like he's looking down. And when you see how high this is, it almost looks like he may be looking in this area. And what is this area? Well, this is the World War II memorial. Those who sacrificed their lives for the empire. So here we have those who worship him, putting an altar of sacrificial lives before the temple they made for him. Do you see that? That's what this is. I mean, what else is it? It's disgustingly horrifying, to be honest, if I'm being honest here. But let's look a little closer at this thing. Okay, so of course we have his symbol right in the middle, right? Can't get around that. But what did we look at today that this reminds us of? What does this remind us of? Right here, Supreme Court, right? We got a fountain. We got a fountain and an oval, right? A fountain, and an oval. Okay, and for those who don't know, this blackened area is actually a pool of water. And these are all fountains spraying around towards the center. All right, but what else have we looked at? We saw specifically in the image of the beast, but we glanced at it earlier today. That this looks like. What does this look like? Yeah, well, yeah. And there we go. An image of the beast. We even have a couple fountains here and a couple of fountains over here. It's the same symbol. You got the three symbols here, but they're a little more fancy here, right? They broke them up, put a little sun symbol in the middle, but it's the exact same layout. It's an image of the beast. So let's look at the image one more time. All right, so here's Rome. Here's New Rome. And if we flip this 180 degrees, we get the exact same layout. Dome, dome, obelisk, obelisk, pentagon, pentagon. And if we look real close, we'll see this set of squares here, right? They took this and put it here. See it? So they took that, moved here, took the obelisk, placed it here, and then they took their shape and dropped it here. The whole thing's laid out just like that. So they made an image of the beast whose deadly wound was healed. And here's some old articles right from the New York Times. Mortal wound healed. 1929 from the Catholic Advocate. Healed a wound. Right? I can't remember where I got this article. I think it was San Francisco Chronicle. But don't quote me on that. But healing the wound. Right? So the whole world reported on this. There's no doubt. This is who we're talking about. So let's look at an article real quick that proves the 42 months that we see in Revelation 13:5. I'm not actually going to read this for you. What I'll do is I'll pause the video. I'm sorry, I'll give you a few seconds to pause the video. There'll be 3 pages, but if you want to just type this into your address bar and read the whole article, I think you'd enjoy it. It's a downloadable PDF, so it's free for anyone that wants to get it. But it's well researched, and I think you'll enjoy it if you're into history and you really want to get into the details of these things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be quiet now, and I'll let you guys read that, and we'll see you next time when we decipher chapter 13. Until then, peace of Yah be with you. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the big dummy, because this is quite incredible what the Holy Spirit has revealed to us here. I mean, look at this thing. Right? This is what they do. This is what they do. Look at what they did. They built this huge statue to a guy they murdered, right? I don't think so. All right, we know who's in power. Here they are, right? There's no question. No question who's in power here. But let's look at this. Let's look what they do. This is what they do here, right? So what do we have over in the beast, right? This is the image, this location. And this is over in the beast in Rome, right? They have the statue of Jupiter. But most people don't believe that. Right? We saw this in this Dragon Family Signs video. These people think it's Peter the Apostle. They think it's Peter the Apostle when it's actually a statue of Jupiter or Satan. Right? So these two appear to be something, but they're not. They're in fact statues of Satan. He's not sitting in the seat of power and jurisdiction because he got murdered. Right? And this certainly isn't Peter the Apostle. This is what Satan does. He deceives, right? He wants to be worshipped even if you think it's someone else. Right? Look what he does to Mary's name. We saw this in the Antichrist Mass in its Tree of Horrors. Right? We saw who this really is. And they drag her name through the filth of wickedness. Right? And we saw that the actual Queen of Heaven is the mother of the gods, right? Here we have Mother of God. It's no coincidence. It's disgusting. I don't know whose name's been dragged through the mud more, Peter or Mary. I'd have to say Mary. But that's what Satan does. He's just filth and wickedness. So let's look at his minions real quick, right? These guys. They built this place. In fact, they built all of these places around here. And they built this. Right? Because why? They work for Rome. And if you don't think he's surrounded by these guys, here's an old picture of him. And what do we see with these guys? Well, of course, they have a cold right hand, coincidentally. But who murdered him? Who did that? This guy. Oh, wait. He's got a cold right hand too, right? Of course, we know what this is. This is the hidden hand. It's no secret to those who just poke around and look at these guys at all. This is a common one. So either they're all fans of Napoleon, like the North Korean leader we see, or they all have something itchy on their chest. Right? No. These guys think they're witches, and they're doing magical nonsense. So let's look what they thought they were doing in Washington. Let's look at that. Here's an old plan they had. This is about 100 years ago, a little over 100 years ago, this map. And this is how they planned to lay out Washington. This was their plans. So let's cut this down a little bit, and we'll turn it upright next to a satellite photo of what we actually have today. Okay? So this is what they wanted to do. This is what we have today. So let's look at this. Did they get it? Pretty darn close. Even over here, the Jefferson, even though there's a lot of water in here. They built up the land and they slapped that memorial right there on that point. Okay? And they think they're doing some magic, right? This is what they're doing for their god. So what exactly is this? Well, it's Kabbalah witchcraft. This is what they call the Tree of Life. Of course, it's the Tree of Death. Don't mess with any of this or you will be dead. Period. But this is what they were trying to lay out here. So let's look again at what we saw earlier. We have Satan's throne, right? The king. They had a king over them. The angel of the bottomless pit, right? Here's his temple. And here's his empire. Okay? So now I want to bring your attention to two things on this Tree of Death. On the top, we have the crown. On the bottom, we have the kingdom. And they were designing this around this. So what happens when we lay it over the top? We get the crown right on the king of big dummies. And the kingdom is right over his kingdom. So this is exactly what they did. Right? Everyone keeps looking at this thinking it's a compass. When it's not. It's part of this. And there's variations to this model. You'll see these inner circles moved around, and sometimes they'll be grouped together. You can poke around if you want, but I'd just stay away from it. It's just nonsense. It's death. But let's go back to the altar here and look at this more. This is truly horrifying. Right? You got the king of death here, and they got an altar of sacrifice here. Now let's lay the tree of death over the top here and see if we can find something else. All right, so we have the crown on top of his dummy head, right? And then we have a circle here. Line comes over to a circle, and then we have a line here, and a line comes off this way. Okay? Now what do we have in these locations? Oh, here we have a circle with a line. And over here, we have that offshoot line. Do you see that? Let's see it again. Okay, this one's not here, but this one is. All right, you see that? And what are these things? Well, if you've ever been there, you know what they are. More sacrifices of death. We have the Vietnam War sacrifices, the Korean War sacrifices, and the World War II sacrifices, all surrounding the Temple of Death. Absolutely disgusting. Right in front of our face. Right in front of our face. Here it is. It's soon to be wiped off the earth. I wouldn't go anywhere near this place. I wouldn't go anywhere near this place. Yeah, that's the proper name. They murdered him, right? They murdered him, put him in there, and then they surrounded it with death. So what is this place? Yeah, it's a temple of death. That's all it could be. Let's go look at the altar a little closer again real quick. What are these places? All right, so here's World War II, Supreme Court, Rome. So what is this? Well, we got an altar of sacrificial death, and if you'll notice, we got squares here, and we got squares here, right? What's this? This is where they judge the dead, because those who worship the beast are dead. All those in those fields are dead and lost. And there's many more than that, but there's nothing we can do for those people. Right? And then this is a congregation where the dead gather, right? They come to worship because they're not following the Lord. They're dead. So these places are nothing but death. That's what their father is. He's a murderer from the beginning. He's the king of liars and deception, and this is what we have here. All right, everyone's look at the street maps and everything like that. This is what they were hiding. This is what the Holy Spirit has revealed to us. All right, we got the temple to Satan. We got the worshippers of Satan with the power symbols of Satan. We have the tree of death laid out here. We have the temple of death with the fields of sacrifice laid before the temple of death. No, I'll stop there. We could go on for hours about this. I had no plans of doing this in this video, but the Holy Spirit once again had other plans, and but what we saw earlier definitely gives some details of what we're going to be looking at in the next video of chapter 13 being deciphered. And this is certainly relevant for the timing of the Holy Spirit revealed this, because we just looked at chapter 12, laying into chapter 13. These all wrap into one, and here's the throne of the big dummy right here given to us. So that's it for today. We'll see you next time.